cacao bean actually as a currency. So it was a type of money, and it was also a drink that the emperor drank. But also then the other people would drink it too. But the emperors were known to kind of hoard cacao beans. But then people on the street trading the cacao for an avocado, for a chicken as money. So that's kind of an interesting way to think of currency as something that you consume. But anyway, so we have here, I'm going to show you first the nibs, because the cacao is a fruit that grows typically between 11 degrees either side latitude of the equator, for the most part, not entirely. And then there are three main types: Trinitario, Forastero, and Criollo. Criollo is sort of the champagne of cacao beans. I'm not sure which ones these are, but they're from Peru. So Peru, Ecuador, Bali are all common sources. You can also get local Indian beans. Okay, so it's a big fruit that grows in these trees, and then there's a sort of pulpy consistency to the fruit, which is normally just thrown away, or you can make paper out of it. It's not usually eaten. But within that, oh look, here's a picture.
Can I ask you something? Because sometimes I buy these nips, but I was told that it's better to buy the beans because then the antioxidants will stay. And once you have crushed it and make it like this, then it's...
I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't really comment on that. If that's the case, then all of this will have definitely gone, because everything we're going to make the chocolate out of has been refined from the bean.
Yeah.
To me, it seems pretty sturdy, and it breaks apart into these nibs. So let me just go back and start with
Yeah. Sorry.
So here's the fruit, and then there's the fruit, and then inside these white pulpy are the beans. So the beans are covered with this sort of papery coating, which is also not the tastiest bit. But then if you just crush it, and I mean, you can crumble it in your hands, so it's not like you're really breaking it apart. But if you were to crumble those beans in your hands, then you end up with these nibs, right? Everybody's seen these before, right? So you can eat these as a snack. They're a little bit bitter. It's just 100% raw cacao. If you get good ones, they taste good, and sometimes if they taste bitter. Sometimes they're more purple than others, and yeah. So basically, from this nib, or from the bean, we can grind, the beans are ground to keep it raw at a low temperature. Well, first they're fermented, and so they're fermented in piles. They're kind of stirred up to keep their temperature fairly low, and then they're ground up, hopefully in like a wet grinder at a slower pace to keep the temperature fairly low, to preserve the antioxidants. And what comes out of that is a bit of a husk, a bit of debris, and this liquid called liquor, cacao liqueur, or paste, which is then further separated into the powder and the butter. So the cocoa liqueur is separated into just the fat and then just the solids, okay, which is still about 20% fat. Okay, does that make sense? So when you're making chocolate, basically as a kind of alchemy, then you have to then recombine. It's possible to make bean to bar, in which you could get the beans or even the nibs and then grind them up and just make bars out of the liquor. But this is a little bit harder to do. You have to really commit to these things. You can find in the store, right? The butter and the powder. So you can also find the paste, which is the hardened liquor. Hardens at any temperature really below body temperature. But if you try to make a bar out of it, it tends to be quite thick and heavy. It doesn't really flow. So I'll show you how that's going to work with the butter. So we're going to make the chocolate. A typical recipe, or a good starting point, so it's kind of an art, right? There's a science to it, and there's also more intuitive art to it. So a good place to start would be, so if we have 300 grams of butter, then we could do at least 150 grams of the powder. I would probably tend more towards 175 or or even 200. So the more butter you have, the more melty, creamy, fat mouth feel the chocolate will have. But the more powder you have, the more flavor it's probably going to have. And of course, the end product is really depending on the materials we're using. So the criollo beans or powders can be really tasty.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So is this mix where when the bar says it's 80% or 70%, or is that other things are mixed in?
Well, so that number is a little bit misleading, or it can be, because it just refers to the amount of cacao in the product. So if there's 80% cacao, it may mean a different ratio of powder to butter, right?
Okay.
So it could be darker and stronger, or it could be creamier and less strong.
So
but
it's
it just
basically
means
those two things mixed together that represent.
yeah, or the liqueur,
Right.
maybe with some butter. Different chocolatiers do it differently. So the raw cacao making process is a bit different than the normal chocolate tempering process, but that's what we're gonna do. So basically, when you're making a chocolate bar, you have to temper the chocolate. So this is done by manipulating the temperature. Sometimes you'll see people use a marble slab, and this will cool the chocolate down, and sort of like something like this against the marble slab. But we're not going to do that on this table. But there are other methods. So basically, we have to temper the chocolate if we want it to keep. So if we make this chocolate tonight, we can mix it together, melt it up, throw it in the freezer, take it out tonight and eat it, and it will be fine. But if we were to take it and leave it out for a week, probably in a week it's going to become crumbly and dry, and maybe even have white, what they call bloom on the surface, and it will still be edible, but it won't be that good texture, it won't have a shine, and it won't snap. So if we want those qualities, we have to temper it. So these are already made into discs, which makes it quite easy. Oftentimes you can get sort of a block, and I would just kind of make it into little, I would shave the block or just cut it into little discs. Since it's so warm here already, it's going to melt really fast. So I would just kind of shave it into small pieces so it melts evenly. So, and then I have a stainless steel bowl. It's really important that everything is dry, because even a little drop of water, if it gets into the batch, it will ruin the whole batch. The chocolate will seize up into a ball, kind of, and get like chunky, and we won't be able to pour it into the mold. So we want to make sure it's dry. And I'm just going to throw these little discs in here, because I think it's going to melt pretty fast. Okay, so here's the trick. To temper the chocolate, we need to raise the temperature up to keep it raw, about 114 degrees Fahrenheit. So, I don't know, I'm sorry, I meant to look it up and I forgot. So Fahrenheit 114. Basically, when we drop it on the back of our hand, it will feel warm. And then we're going to lower the temperature to about 90 or 85 even degrees Fahrenheit again. And stirring it the whole time. Because, I'll use this bain-marie